On the company, because you're going to get questions on, all right, so why are you here? What is it about Deckers that you like? You know, and so you got to be prepared to answer that question, or, you know, what is it about working in a casino that attracts you?
Doing your research on the company or in the position that you're applying for is super important too.
You don't have to memorize the website. You just need a few pointers. And if there's a mission statement or some core values associated with that company, I would definitely focus on those. Those might come up in the interview.
While I was on a panel, you could tell those that were interviewed, the ones that researched Santa Barbara City College, you could tell us maybe parts of the mission. It told us that they were more interested in working for us than someone who didn't.
I used to interview sort of all day long for all levels of positions and even executive level positions. And my opening question to any candidate was, so what do you know about us? Okay, I can't tell you how many executives hadn't done their research on a company. And in the day of internet research, that's just to me inexcusable. And it would almost be like, we'd almost just weed them out.
So I've had candidates tell me, I haven't had a chance to look at your website. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, you know what? I looked at your LinkedIn page, I read your cover letter, I read your resume, I called you, we talked on the phone. You haven't looked at my website yet? Come on. Why do you want to work here then?
The interview process starts with turning in your application. And don't think you can get away with wearing a t-shirt and flip-flops to turning in your application. I know that it's just a few seconds, but get dressed up for it.
I think for the most part, you need to err on the side of professionalism. Yes, I would wear my pumps to an interview at Starbucks. You better believe it. I want to stand out.
I would as well, but I'd in the interview say, what would be the appropriate dress for my shift?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah. Sometimes you'll have an opportunity during a phone interview to actually ask what's the dress etiquette, what's appropriate.
Dress appropriate for the industry you're applying for. Let the employer be able to envision you in that role. So, if you're going to apply at a retailer, you probably don't want to show up in a suit unless you're applying to Men's Warehouse, right? Because they sell suits. So really put yourself in that position. If you're going into food and beverage industry, a light blouse, slacks, something to make them look like, okay, this person, I can see them in our uniform, I can see them as a server or a waitress or something like that.
So just when you're on an interview, I always go with an idea of just keeping it clean, keeping it very professional. I don't put a lot of perfume on because that might affect the person that's interviewing you. Obviously, if you have tattoos, things like that, hide them. Jewelry, very simple, very classy, just very professional. I always go into my interviews with a black notebook, and I have my resume, my cover letter, I have my business references. I also go onto the website and print out information about the company. I have it highlighted with notes so that the employer, because when I'm sitting at the desk and it's here and it's open, they can see that I've done my diligence. They can see that I've gone the extra step to actually print out that information. When I sit down at the table, I lean a little bit forward, just kind of showing them that I'm interested. Engaged. I don't ever sit like this, Engaged. Exactly. Posture's huge, eye contact, just being there and showing. I think it's all in your demeanor. It's not just in your words. I think it's the energy that you give off and how you come across.
Behavioral interview questions are the most difficult. Tell me about a time when you dealt with a difficult employee and how did you handle it? Have you ever worked with someone you didn't like? Tell me about a time when you saved the company money. I mean, there are hundreds of these different questions, and they're trying to assess all types of different things, from behavioral types of scenarios to competency to conflict resolution. It's a very tricky one, and if you don't prepare, it can be something that really stumps you. So that would be something that I would recommend you research.
Well, we know that there's plenty of people that can type, that can do accounting work, that can do HR work, that can do manufacturing, that can cook from they're graduates from the culinary school here, and we know that they can handle the technical pieces. What we're looking for, again, is, as Steve alluded to, that cultural fit. We want to find somebody for us that's going to fit within that Chumash culture. Are they front-facing? Are they guest, responsive? Are they honest? Are they going to look us in the eye? Are they going to smile? Are they going to be presentable? And so the behavioral-based questions are going to usually give us triggers as to, do we think this person is being honest with us? Is this person afraid to speak up if they know that their coworker is doing something wrong? Would they take the right channels, or would they join the coworker? Would they say, oh, I don't need to do anything about that, and just sweep it under the carpet? I mean, it tells us a lot about what type of person you might be, and sets some triggers.
The whole theory behind behavioral interviewing is past behavior is your best predictor of future behavior.
When you're asked a question, don't just answer it with a short answer and think that you're finished, because the committee will wait, see if you're finished, and then move on. And then you've just lost that question. I mean, it was just a quick answer. So, there again, you're selling yourself. You need to answer that question thoroughly, because there are some questions that you could answer yes or no, but you don't want to. You want to say, well, yes, because.
The less we talk, the more you talk, the better it is. So we're gonna ask you an open-ended question that's not answered with a yes or a no, and then you then show us your personality. Don't go off into a 10-minute spiel on an answer, but you show your personality, you show your knowledge, you show your interest, you show your personality.
So when you're answering those interview questions, elaborate, give as much information as possible, and don't just say yes or no or keep it really short, because this is your opportunity. You made it to the interview, which is hard enough to do.
I want to make sure that when I'm coaching someone to send them out on a job interview, that they allow the employer to lead the interview. Even though you'll be talking mostly as the candidate, you want to make sure that you allow that person, whether it's HR or the hiring manager, to kind of hold the reins and guide you through it.
Most of our interviews are about 1 hour if it's like your first interview. But if you've answered one question and you're 50 minutes in, you've talked way too much, you're not going to get the job.
One of our regional directors, her favorite thing to do, she said, is to watch the squirm. And I'm like, what is that? Like, I don't understand. And she says, well, I like to ask a question and then I like to just wait for their answer. I said, okay, and then what? And she's like, and then I wait some more. Because the more quiet you are, the more talking they'll do. And then you get to find out more about them. So it's an interesting technique, but, just be prepared. Prepare yourself for the talking points so you're not rambling on and sharing information and stuff that you probably go, oh my gosh, I probably shouldn't have said that.
Right.
I would say just make sure that you're relaxed. I know that's hard because it's a very tense situation. Sometimes it's your livelihood. But if you go in relaxed, they're going to be relaxed too. And I know that we've always tried to make sure that we're relaxed on our end to pass that on. Now at Cabrillo College, we write down everything you say. So we're not even giving you eye contact. So you need to make sure that you are, that you're selling yourself. That's the main thing that is out there is that you're selling yourself. You sell yourself to me because, I want to know that information. And so many people are shy and timid about doing that. Well, you all have special gifts that you've obviously written down on your resume. Talk about some of those things and make sure that you listen to the questions and then answer the questions that they've asked. And there's no harm in saying, could you please repeat the question? Or have I answered the question sufficiently for you? Or did I answer the full question? Because sometimes you're in one question, there's 3 questions. Right. And it's hard to remember what you've answered. And there's no harm in just saying, could you repeat the question? They're there to find the best candidate, and you're there to sell yourself. So they're willing to do all that.
How do we balance, the desire to show our personality during an interview with remaining sort of cool, calm, and professional? So my suggestion is to be yourself. And the reason that I say that is it's better to find out during the interview that it's not going to be a good fit because of maybe personality or culture than to find out after you get hired, right? So if I go into an interview in a company and I know this company is super formal, super serious, and doesn't really seem to like to have fun or do anything extracurricular, and I go in there and just pretend to be that person, maybe I'll get the job, but I'm going to end up in an environment where I do not fit in, and it's not going to work long term, right? And like I could tell just by your question that you have a good personality. You make eye contact, you smile, right? No, I mean, so right there, just by sitting here being yourself, asking a question, a straight up question from the heart, it's you're being yourself, and you come across well right now. So if you're sitting on the other side of the table, okay, this girl's cool, good eye contact, personable, doesn't seem afraid, seems relaxed, good candidate right off the bat.
You can say, can we come back to that in a few moments? I just need to gather my thoughts. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I'll think about it.
Oh,
that's
great.
acceptable.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Good to know.
Yeah.
There's also that uncomfortable silence. If you're a good interviewer, you ask the question, and the person's stumped. You just kind of sit there and wait, and you wait. And the person who's being interviewed is thinking, oh, well, if I just sit here quiet long enough, they're going to ask another question, and they won't. So eventually you're going to have to speak up. Yeah.
Yes, going back to those questions, is it okay to honestly say, I don't know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you really don't know what you would do?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll think about it.
And for a lot of people, personality, it's overcoming fear, right? For a lot of us, it's the fear of the interview. It's the fear of the unknown, right? And everyone says, just go in there and be confident. It's hard to be confident if you're like freaking out the day of the interview and scared about what's to come.
Here to practice.
Yeah, so kind of role play, practice, all that kind of stuff is going to help you be less nervous on the day of.
Probably of equal importance in closing your interview is to ask some questions to the employer. Not too many, but you definitely want to come prepared with, I'd say, maybe 3 to 5 good questions about the expectations of the position, perhaps something intelligent about the company and the company's direction, and even a semi-personal or career question about the interviewer. What do you like about working at Deckers? How long have you been working for the Chumash? What is your, what are some of the things that you enjoy the most? It's definitely okay to ask the interviewer that. I wouldn't spend too much time on it. 3 to 5 is probably a good limit, but it can be a nice opportunity to get to know them a little bit better and to close the interview. Yeah.
Great.
I couldn't agree more. I've been in interviews where I've really liked the person, and at the end of the interview I go, okay, well, we got about 5-10 minutes left. I hope you have some questions for me. And they're like, nope, I'm good. It's like, oh, that's a little disappointing.
Bad.
Yeah.
I'm actually very surprised by how few people actually ask questions at the end. The candidates ask questions to the employer. They're very few, and they stand out.
Yeah.
So when they do that, I make a comment at the end, oh, look, they ask questions, They did their research. They looked at the company. You pick up some questions also from what you're being asked, because we're going to do our part, because we want to hire the right person. So we will ask specific questions that make us see if you're the right fit, that you will succeed in this position. So we will do our homework and come up with good questions. So you can pick up some clues, but come prepared. Do your research and come with some questions for us as well.
At that point, you can show you what research you have done on their company. And you can also tell by the questions that they answer. Sometimes they'll ask you the questions that are in the job announcement. And that is a red flag for me, thinking you didn't read anything. You didn't even know what you applied for, because you're asking me questions that have already been answered in the application. So that to me is a red flag.
You're also interviewing the company. The company's interviewing you, and they're ultimately, they get to choose whether they're going to hire you or not. You also get to choose. And we have people who we make an offer to, and they say, yeah, no, I'm going to stay where I am, or I'm going to take this other offer instead. So you do have a choice. And so when you're interviewing, you need to ask them questions. When I interview a candidate and say, do you have any questions for me? And they say no, that means they're really just hoping that I'll hire them. That's not what I want to hear. I want to know that you're interested in our culture. I want to know what you think that, what are my chances for advancement here? Sometimes you can get a little nifty about it, but mostly I want to know that the candidate is thinking, what am I going to do to benefit this company, and how am I going to learn at this company?
Don't chew gum, definitely. If you have any lip or nose piercings or anything like that, I would say take those out. Do not wear those. For the girls, no loud colored, bright colored nail polish.
Covered
or makeup.
tattoos.
Yes, cover tattoos always, if possible. I would also say that use the bathroom before you get to an interview. The worst thing to do is to show up for an interview and ask to use the bathroom. You're on their time. Make sure you're there, you're ready.
Don't show up late. Group interviews
yeah.
it always happens. Sorry, I couldn't find parking. I couldn't. Okay. You can call back and reschedule. If you're going to be late to your interview, you're going to be late to your job.
Yes.
So just keep that in mind. I mean, we know stuff happens, but communicate with the employer definitely as quickly as possible with that.
Get all your information. So when you're setting up the interview, make sure you know that you got the location, parking information, who you're going to be meeting with as well, so that you know their names and titles. I provide that usually when people are getting interviewed.
Absolutely unacceptable to bring that cell phone even into the office. Leave it in the car.
Leave it in your portfolio or put it on silent in your pocket. You need to take a notepad and try to ignore the cell phone.
It looks very good when someone comes in with a notepad. It looks like you're, like you said, sitting forward and, you're engaged.
Usually from younger candidates, but it's, they get a little nervous. And the first thing we would hear is, why are you applying with us? I need a job. Okay, well, clearly you need a job. Like we all need a job to survive and to move forward in life. But I think that's just one of the things that you should really kind of ex-nay, like, right, I need a job, and just scratch it out. Like, don't ever say that. Talk about why you're interested in that particular employer specifically. And then another question to steer away from right off the bat when you're picking up an application typically is, what's the pay? How much do you pay? I understand that a lot of us, I was a college student too, so there's bills to pay, there's things to do, you're on a strict budget, but do your research about that ahead of time. Talk to people that maybe are already in retail, maybe hold similar positions.
I would also say to stay as positive as possible, like if you have other issues going on in your life or personal life that are negative, not to bring those up in the interview, and also to never talk badly about a previous employer that you've worked for. I interview people, unfortunately, who I will be interviewing and asking them, I see that you only worked here for a short amount of time. Can you tell me why that ended? And what I mean is, did you choose to leave on your own? Were you laid off? I mean, they're really not asking for the whole story. And if it's a negative event, you really don't want to elaborate because they're thinking of hiring you for them. So when you leave them, are you going to talk negatively about them? So they're just little red flags that come up, just little things to remember.
And you can turn it around into something positive. So think about it. There's always a situation that might have been bad, but you can look at the positive of what you gained from it, and you can explain it and explain what you learned from it as well, but in a positive way.
That it was a decision, a mutual decision, if that's what took place. I mean, if they come to you and they're telling you, this isn't working and we're going to have to end your assignment or your job, then, you can say it was a mutual decision. It wasn't the best industry for me or the job that was for me, and we both knew it. So I chose to move on, or they asked me to move on. You can put it that way. Terminated is like a bad word, but
I think just taking that ownership of it. It happened. There's nothing you can do about it. It's part of your past. So if you just take the ownership for it and say, yeah, unfortunately, it didn't work out. Right. I didn't get along with my boss, and I saw it coming. That happens all the time. And so just to have that conversation, and then they might ask, well, what are some things that maybe that employer did that you didn't like? They might ask you that type of stuff too. So just be prepared to answer some of those questions, but keep a positive mindset for it, and keep those answers brief out of all of them, because
it can be tricky. Or you focus on, again, the positive. It might have been that you were with that employer for years, and then there was a change in supervisor or reorganization or something that happened that's where you had a hard time, but you had all that history. Focus on the history.
Typically, someone will ask, well, why did you leave your last job? And if you have a compelling reason, and as far as I'm concerned, a compelling reason is it wasn't a good culture fit, or I mean, there's a 1,001 really legitimate reasons why, you can leave a company, or a company can, decide to fire you, and you can still have, a sanitized version of why that was. I think it's probably happened for all of us in our careers. Yeah, I mean, it's not, to be fired is not the end of the world. You will live again.
It feels like it for a bit.
Yeah.
And it feels like it when you have to go talk about it. The key is when you go talk about it, try to be positive. And I know that can be tough, but try to be positive.
Would you say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, would you tell them yes or no about contacting your last employer?
I would say that I prefer, my response would be I prefer that you not. And you'd hope that, but you can give them other references. Say I prefer, I'll give you these contacts. You don't have to. Now they still might. And depending on why you were fired. I mean, if you were fired for stealing, well, one, even if I called and got a reference, they're not going to tell me that legally. They can't tell me that. They can just tell me that you worked here from this date to this date. If I say, did she earn this amount, they can confirm that. And what's the
Eligible
other?
for rehire.
Eligible for rehire. Now that's the flag for they were fired. But I'll tell you what, I've said people were eligible for rehire and that they weren't fired. They're just people I would not hire again. So you may not have a problem from it. The fear of it and fear of the problem from it may be the harder part to overcome.
Gaps are something that do need to be addressed. And so it all depends. My view is, what have you been doing in that time? There are a bunch of really valid reasons why you may not have had a specific job, during a particular period. You could have been pursuing other interests.
Times have changed too, because
absolutely.
In 2007, I mean, they would have looked at gaps and thrown it away. But in 2012, after what we've all just gone through, they are a lot easier to explain.
Absolutely.
And I would just say, be prepared to address the gaps.
Just say
positively.
Be proactive.
As hard as that can be. You want to address it positively. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, and I would say it's more important for our organization probably to follow your interview with a thank you. Rather than having the cover letter, the big piece would be for us to have the thank you. And you can send it through email. We all know that that's acceptable these days. But again, it would be, dear Jennifer McKinney, thank you for taking your time this afternoon, that type of thing. That tells us that you're really interested, that you accepted us as we accepted you, and that you are serious about it, rather than, hey, thanks. Or not, communicating back at all. We really put it up to the candidate to call us or to check in with us and say, hey, I really was interested. Thanks for your time.
Don't wait for them to try to get a hold of you. You're not bugging them. Somebody who is ambitious and hungry to work and is interested in that again, that's going to come across just like the other question about the interview. I would say always follow up. Yeah, always.
And I work for the UC system, so we have a long process. So that's a good follow-up question to ask at the end of your interview. Somebody was asking is, how long is your process? How long will it about take for you to go through all the interviews? When is a good time for me to call back and find the status find out the status of my application? I get those calls, and I'm always happy to provide information. And those people that actually call get more information than anybody else. So even if they didn't get the position, I will have a little talk with them and tell them, you know what, this position, you didn't get it, but it doesn't mean that you have to give up. We have different interview panels for each position, and I suggest that I highly encourage you to reapply for others and see if you make more progress on the next one. So I always give them a little more information, so it's always a good thing.
One of the things you want to do is when you go into an interview, I always encourage people, get a business card. When you leave the interview, say, hey, can I get your contact information? And I've got 3 adult children, so every time they've gone for jobs, I said, make sure you write that thank you note.
The follow-up thank you letter that Jackie mentioned is critically important and can mean the difference between you being selected or another candidate being selected. And not only is it a professional courtesy, but it is an indicator that you have follow-up skills.
A lot of times when you come in for an interview, you're going to meet 2, 3, 4 people, okay? And it's real easy just to send one thank you to all of them. That's exactly the same. And that's better than nothing. But if you can make it specific to each individual interview that you had, like, I really enjoyed talking to you about your benefit programs today. Thank you very much. That shows detail and follow-up at the level that organizations like ours want to hire at.
I think back of an associate most recently that I ended up hiring just because she wouldn't stop calling. And she had turned out to be the best that I've had in a while because she was so eager, but it also translated to her work ethic. So I think just that continued follow-up. I didn't have any positions at the time. I mean, I'm always accepting applications, but there was a moment where, reality was there was no extra payroll. I didn't have extra payroll to onboard and get somebody on. But I found it because she was adamant, and she's like, I want to work for you. I want to work for this company, and I'm going to call you until you have a position available. And I said, okay. And so I think judge your audience when it comes down to it. I think we'd established that type of conversation during the interview, that was okay. Some employers may not want that, so I think you just have to kind of ask that as an interview question, would it be okay if I follow up with you in a couple days to see, what other applicants you have? And in the retail industry, when you go into that, as some of you might be going into retail over the holidays or stuff like that for seasonal work, then, they're going to be looking at hiring, anywhere from 10 to, depending on the retailer, some only hire a couple, and some, in our cases, hire 50 to be able to get through the holiday season and our peak, time of year. So, when we look for the type of people that we would want to create that demographic and that fun, energetic vibe on our sales floor, we're going to interview everybody before we go through and offer those positions. So it's good to follow up because you might have gotten lost in the shuffle somewhere along the line. I think that that's always important. And the employer is not going to admit that they forgot about you. But the reality is at times they'll forget about you because the sheer volume of people that, come through there to apply.